Whether you're home or away, stay connected to your team with T-Mobile, the network that covers 99% of people in America. They've been investing billions to light up their best network ever. From your backyard to a sold-out stadium, get T-Mobile's best coverage yet. Plus, with T-Mobile, you get a price lock guarantee, so they won't raise the rate of your talk, text, and data, ever. There's never been a better time to switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today. Coverage not available in some areas. Price lock exclusions like taxes, fees, select promos, and third-party services apply. See T-Mobile.com.
Hail Cheaters! Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
Good evening, Josh. I'm great. Yeah, we're coming off of the weekend of Game Week 21, about to embark on a little bit of a break for the Premier League. But there are lots of fixtures. Can you count them, Josh? That will have impact on Game Week 22 in 2 weeks. Like we've got to be watching both the EFL Cup and the FA Cup for injuries, rotation, replays.
Still have one more Premier League game tomorrow. We still have the Fulham Spurs match tomorrow. I need roughly 37 points from Mitro, who's been like the most disappointing player in my team so far. Maybe he can redeem himself a little bit tomorrow. There's a lot going on. This, I guess just at the very top, we'll note that there is a potential double game week that'll happen. Man United and Leeds with both double in game week 22, which is the next game week. But that requires them to not have to play an FA Cup replay during when they would replay that match. So they announced it so that fans could buy tickets, make travel plans, whatever. But I think it's one of them. I think I can't. I'm not even going to look it up. But one of them plays Reading and one of them plays Boreham Wood. And so, I think it's Man United plays Reading.
Yeah, Man United plays Reading. And I think Leeds is not, they don't even know who they're going to play yet because Boreham Wood and Accrington Stanley have to do their replay because they drew. That's happening on Tuesday to determine who plays Leeds on Saturday. Now, Accrington Stanley and Boreham Wood can't tie here because they've already tied, and I think they'll go to penalties at that point. This is like true in the weeds fantasy stuff. We've been saying, Josh, like this is a season for the real fans, for the real FPL heads. What I don't get about this double for Leeds and Manchester United, I understand, announce it so fans can buy tickets and figure out travel if it's going to happen. Why did they add it to the FPL fixture list already? Because that could really lead to some mass confusion.
They did that. They did that with the Spurs Man City double last week as well. Yeah, I have to admit this is maybe my like not so secret feeling any longer. But I think I'm like done with double game weeks. I don't think I enjoy them. I think it's like eating ice cream all the time, Brandon. It seems like when you're like, oh, when you're a kid, like, when you're a kid, you're like, when I'm an adult, I'm just going to eat everything I want all of the time, and that's going to be amazing. And then you hit your late 30s, and suddenly you have 10 chicken nuggets, and you have to you can't sleep that night, because your heartburn is so bad. These are this is how I feel about double game weeks. I'm having nonstop FPL heartburn right now, and I need a little.
Your doctor break. Said, Josh, listen, you got Leeds fixtures clogging up your arteries right now, so you're going to need a stint.
Yeah, and it's just a mix, and I get it. It's all fine, whatever. I mean, this week was actually a nice normal game week, which was fun, but I think it all kind of goes back to that postponed weekend, and I think that's where all these fixtures to be made up as a result of that. And a couple spillover games the next weekend too, because of some police allocation, and then obviously the compressed schedule as well because of the World Cup, and so it's a very jam-packed schedule, but it should lighten up a little bit over the next couple of weeks. So there will be a bunch of doubles near the end, but that's something we traditionally are kind of used to. Those are the kind of classic FA Cup doubles. So. Anyway, I'm starting from a place of angst, Brandon, because I had easily my worst game week of the season. I think I'm going to be out of the last cheater standing league too.
You're not.
I'm not. Okay,
there are a couple of Ivan Toney captainers at the bottom of the table, so don't you worry.
Saving my bacon, those people. So a tough week. But I was starting from a good place, so I will keep my complaining to a minimum. It was just, it was one of those weeks where not only did the players, right, we have the all of these kind of a lot of the same, across all of our teams, there's a lot of players that we all kind of own, right? Mm-hmm. We all own Erling Haaland. As a result of the double game weeks, we all mostly own Harry Kane and Kevin De Bruyne. I realize there are exceptions here, but just Rashford, but Trippier. And so those players were where all my points came from. And all of my players that have low ownership were the players who blanked this week. And the sort of corresponding players, right? The sort of highly owned players that I don't have all delivered, got some kind of return. And so it just sort of led to this kind of worst case scenario where I'm on 61 points and then I'm seeing people with like 95 to 100 points. And so sometimes it's like the trick sometimes is to have a bad game week when everyone's having a bad game week, or when the kind of range of outcomes is fairly low, right? And sometimes you just have a bad game week where the high range is very high. So it's 2 red arrows in a row for me. We'll see what happens with Mitro tomorrow, but I'm at 26,000 overall. So I'm really having a great season. I'm not gonna go on too much with this. I was telling you before the podcast started, used to be like longtime listeners of the pod will know when I had a bad game week, it was like Josh's rant corner, and I'd come on here and I'd just complain about everything. None of it was my fault.
Yeah, the system's broken.
Yeah, the system's broken. And now when I have a bad game, I just find it incredibly annoying. I'm just like super annoyed. And that's kind of where I am right now. I was just like annoyed, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. I watched the matches still. I couldn't, especially, again, because we've talked about this a lot. This is central to the Always Cheating ethos, which is fantasy should be a way, the game is fun and valuable. We wouldn't do this podcast if we didn't love the game, but it should be a way, like another angle to watch Premier League matches, to watch the matches. If you don't enjoy the matches, you probably long term aren't really going to be playing fantasy, because sort of what's the point, right? Yeah. And so today I had this moment where Saka scored, and I kind of wanted to turn off the TV, and I hate to say that, but it was just I was just like, this cannot get any worse. And I had I had 0 pointers across the board, and then I was like, what are you doing? Like, it's a 2-1 match. You're ostensibly an Arsenal supporter. Like, why you just cannot let fantasy overrun how you feel right now. And I sort of came to my senses, and I just watched the last 40 minutes like a fan, and it was really wonderful. I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was great. So I sort of pulled myself back from the brink, and I think that's why when we're talking right now, I'm not really in that bad of a mood, because it's just not. It's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. So that's where I am right now.
I remember a Manchester derby from maybe like 5 years ago. It was the Pogba derby, where he pulled Manchester United back from the brink in the second half and scored 2 goals. And I don't really remember what happened in the first half that absolutely annihilated my fantasy game week. And I did that thing where I was just like, shut off the TV, started playing FIFA or something. And then, like 10 minutes later, I'm just sort of like, well, maybe I'll just put it on the iPad. And
right, the emotional distance. I watch on my phone sometimes, so I need the emotional distance of a phone that I can flip over. If things aren't going well.
I have had a roller coaster of a game week, and it's gone better than yours. Certainly, I'm currently on a green arrow. If you check FPL Game Week, I'm basically on a gray dot at 108K with auto subs. So we'll see. I have Andreas Pereira and Harry Kane to play. So I do think that holding my green arrow is very much in the offings. The question
really
would be
no players that could. I guess Mitro could hurt you. That'd be the only one.
Mitro could very much hurt me. I think if Pereira does anything, that I can crash into the top 100K, which would be amazing. And there were moments during the game week, during the weekend, where I was in the top 100K, and I was loving it. Certainly when Bruno came through and his assist. Yeah,
what a goal from Rashford too.
Yeah, I mean, God, he absolutely banged it, and Saka just going to that same corner to mimic Rashford's celebration. It was like the blockbuster version of when Mitro and Tony were exchanging the same celebration earlier this season. They're like, okay, well, these teams are actually playing for something here.
Well, it was kind of interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, what a contrast, right? We had Liverpool-Chelsea play what has to be the worst Liverpool-Chelsea match since I've been watching the Premier League closely, right? So I'll say the worst in 13 years. I would say there was nothing to enjoy about that match, except a cap a return if you had him in fantasy. But that was just like the team, even the teams that lined up. It's a rough moment for both those clubs. They've had a ton of success in recent years, so it's all fine.
Yeah, there were signs of hope. Mudra came on and he looked great, and you just think if you've got João Felix, Raheem Sterling, and Mudra up front three, you got a little bit of a preview of good matches that may come. But to me, that was kind of a great match for Chelsea, where they just needed any sort of result against a top six club, given sort of the narrative around them right now. It looks so much worse for Liverpool, who are beyond dysfunctional at this point.
I guess that's really what it. Maybe I'm guilty of looking at this a little too much through the Liverpool lens, because I agree. When Mudryk came on later, he almost scored. I like very shortly after coming on in that match. Which actually, I think this leads us nicely, Brendan, into the theme of today's podcast, which is our mid-season review. This is long time listeners. This is a pod for the long timers, Brandon. This is one of my favorite pods to do each year. We've done this since we started doing the pod those many years ago, and basically we go club by club and just talk about where everybody stands, and we do this alphabetically, Brandon. So it's
no favorites.
It's on the no favorites here exactly. The only controversy is: do you start with Arsenal or do you start with AFC Bournemouth, Brandon? Normally I start with Arsenal. This time around, though, I did mix it up, and we're starting with AFC Bournemouth, Association Football Club Bournemouth. Well, okay, maybe one day we will have Accrington Stanley, Brandon, in the Premier League, and then they can.
I want rugby rules Bournemouth in the next rundown. There's none of these the associated football rules. I want to use my hands in Bournemouth.
You want the Queens or whatever that is. Yeah. All right. Well, so you and I both have had okay game weeks. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but I want to get right into this pod because this is a fun one.
Let's do it.
And yeah, this is, again, we have 2 weeks in between matches. And so this is kind of, this is your midseason report card. This is a chance to check on where we stand, reset a little bit after a frantic restart. And so, I want to just quickly note, the always cheating. If you enjoyed this week's pod and you want to support it, you can go to patreon.com/always cheating. We're trying to keep these little Patreon shout outs a little more.
You're doing a great job,
brief. Yeah, thank you. I thought so too. Bonus podcast each week. We kind of had it screwed up this one a little bit because of our travel plans, and so we have a bonus in the works, but we have to actually do that. I don't want to get in that. This is like when you start one of those. What did they have before Patreon? It was like the old GoFundMe's or whatever. And, like a Kickstarter, where you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get your pack.
Totally doing that.
I remember Tom Sharpling did this for the WFMU. He was promising this package of stuff for people who supported it. Like 3 years in, he was still promising the same from like a 2014 pledge drive. Yeah. We won't be doing that. The always cheating Super League, though, Brendan, I do want to read out the top 10 here. So in 10th is Adam O'Brien. In 9th is Sveinig Arneson. In 8th is Graham McBlain. 7th, Michael Slagter. 6th is Rob Duncan. 5th is Robert Nilsson. 4th, I was going to make a Harry Nilsson joke, but I couldn't think of anything to say there. Yeah, just let's insert your own Harry Nilsson reference there, Brandon. In 4th is Tom Apadale, or perhaps Apadale. In 3rd is Mark Jordan. In 2nd is Siakir Tay. And Brandon, we have a new manager in first place. Yes. Semi-enders Mark Bleakley is in first. 83 points this week. Congratulations to Mark.
Mark Bleakley sounds like a very British name, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's like a name from like the original Office, right?
Yeah. Sounds like an East Ender. I guess he's the semi-ender, but anything with the word bleak in it, it does remind me of maybe we're living in the Midlands or something.
All right, well, Brandon, that's it. Let's take a break. We're going to get into our mid-season report card right after this. All right, Brandon, we're back. It's our FPL midseason check-in, thoughts on all 20 clubs. We're going to go alphabetically, kick things off with AFC Bournemouth. And what we're going to do is we have some general thoughts. We have some players noted that we want to chat a little bit about. Sometimes we can talk about the players that are not popping up on our little list, which I think is kind of interesting. Looking at you, Raheem Sterling. But let's kick things off with Bournemouth. It is, well, first of all, the first takeaway I had was everyone in that squad is injured right now. Like what are they going to do? This is this is a disaster.
Yeah, more flags than, I don't know, what has a lot of flags, like the circus on this team page. And I look at this lineup, and Phil Billing is actually the top points getter for the season in fantasy, and it is just deja vu with Huddersfield all over again. That was when I was first introduced to the maestro that is Phil Billing, and I think he's going to suffer the same fate. I feel like if you go back 2 to 3 months, we were all saying, wow, Bournemouth actually might not get relegated. They're not bad. When O'Neill kind of took over as interim manager, they had a good run of results. And let's just pretend we never said that, because they look destined for the drop at this point. Right?
Bournemouth and Leicester are the two clubs that really, the World Cup break came at the worst time. Leicester were unstoppable defensively. It seems hard to believe now, but Brendan, it really was true. I think that's why I went with Ward over Kepa, which a moment of great foolishness on my part. That's an 8-point swing right there, baby. That was a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
But yeah, Dominic Solanke was. I actually owned him for the last game week before the break, and he's missed the last couple now.
Did you enjoy owning him? Was that fun?
Well, yeah, he replaced, I think, a 0 from Mitro. So or maybe I don't know, whatever it was from Mitro. And so yeah, I'll take an extra 3 points. That all adds up. So yeah, I think it's really not a lot to say about Bournemouth. Unfortunately, again, we want to keep this on the FPL perspective, and I think if we let too much non-FPL stuff go in, that's when this podcast turns into a 4-hour block. But
Then I think it is all about Solanke, right? Because I think there is a band of forwards where we're looking in that 5 to 6 million range for our third forward. We haven't solved that third forward problem yet. I guess Nketiah is probably the current answer. But based on what we know about Bournemouth in this midseason report card is don't go to Solanke or his Welsh counterpart. I'm blanking on his name right now.
Moore.
Kiefer Moore.
Yeah.
So any thoughts you have then on Solanke?
Just no thoughts on Solanke. The one player who didn't quite crack the list, who I thought has played well at times recently, is Jaden Anthony. He did score a goal in the 1-1 draw this week with Forest, but I actually thought he played pretty well. God, I think it was maybe away to Man United in game week 19. I thought he put in a decent performance in that one, and the problem is he's too expensive. He came in at 5.5 million. He has 3 goals, no assists on the season, so he's kind of unownable. He's down to 5.2 now, but still. So just there's really, I'm not even advocating for him for fantasy wise, but just I'm giving him a shout, Brandon. Yeah. And I think the one surprise is that we don't really have a keeper option here. Typically. On a promoted team, there's like every year there's like one promoted keeper that everyone kind of flocks to, and I actually kind of forgot about Neto for a minute there. I guess he was injured for a while, maybe that's part of it. But Norberto Marara Neto.
It's like a name keeper right out of the Super League. 2 clean sheets for Bournemouth on the season. That is awful for a newly promoted team. You really got to focus on the defense, guys.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if we're starting to see. They're not a promoted team, but with Leeds, we're starting to see the 0-0 today, and I'm wondering if Marsh is going to try to pull a Scotty Parker there, Brandon, and just 0-0 his way to staying up. Yeah. I don't know if it'll work or not. All right, let's move on to the next club. This is a club we certainly will have more thoughts on, which is Arsenal. The first thing that surprised me slightly was that the top point scorer for Arsenal this season is Martin Odegaard. which of course he's put in a ton of great performances. But I just in my head, it's not like I check this stuff out all the time, and I just assumed that Saka would be the overall points leader for Arsenal, but Odegaard is well ahead. He still only costs 6.9 million, so he's very affordable. They're only 30% owned. He really should be higher than that, given what he's doing.
I suspect he will be higher after this break, and he's the fourth highest point scorer in the entire game. Now he's
wow.
He's like, let's see, 20. He's less than 20 points behind Harry Kane in third. And his just results coming back from the World Cup for Odegaard is he's only blanked in that one fixture against Newcastle in game week 19. Yeah. Otherwise, it's been 2 goals and 3 assists since the restart. And he would be the Arsenal player to own. I agree with you.
It's been painful having Martinelli during this run.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to think about that. Now, I think the was it the stats heads, the quants, who were warning us off of Martinelli coming back from the World Cup. He was sort of dipping in form, and Saka or Odegaard was the way to go. I wasn't ready to believe that. Do we have enough information now with Saka scoring goals like he did today against United, almost scored the exact same goal twice against United? This man is in incredible form. And then, we already said our piece about Odegaard. What's the case for keeping Martinelli here?
Well, I guess the case for keeping Martinelli is that you wouldn't want to burn a transfer on him, right? He's still the starting left wing. He's very active. Even today, is heavily involved. It feels like he's pressing a tiny bit right now, maybe, but he still has these incredible runs. I certainly am not. Arsenal have a confirmed double game week in game week 23. So let's get through. I'm certainly not going to be mixing and matching before then. Mm-hmm. My plan is to have one of Saka and Odegaard, and I want to wait another week before I really decide what to do there. And then after 23, I think then that will also be, I guess that'll be 3 more fixtures, right? To kind of evaluate, because you'll have the 2 and 23, and then from there, I think it'll be easier for me to decide what I want to do with Martinelli.
So Trossard comes in. What did I say, Josh? Why did they buy Trossard? To play the last 5 minutes of every game. So on current evidence, that's still true, but Trossard was getting showered with all the praise for helping to create the winning goal. So I guess that's just one to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. I mean, do you see him starting over Martinelli though? I mean, I don't see it. I don't know.
I don't see it. I do think that the FPL community is going to be asking this question a lot over the next couple of weeks. And if it means anything, it means don't get Martinelli or Trossard. It doesn't mean get one or the other. It may just mean, Saka and Odegaard are clearly the guys at the moment to have. Then there is Nketiah, who has looked incredible filling in for Jesus. And the concern was Jesus does so much all over the pitch for Arteta. Would Nketiah be able to do that? And I see him doing all of the same pressures, pressing, dropping back to help with defense. And then he's dropping into those, he's pushing into those correct spaces in the attacking box and scoring the goal. So what more do you want? I think I wonder if this double in game week 23 is basically one defender, one midfielder, and then Nketiah up top.
Well, that's right. I suppose I should include Nketiah in there, because I still have Mitro. Mitro to Nketiah is a really easy move as well. But even just looking at it through the report card lens here, I think that you're right. I think just like what an incredible. I think if we have an eye going forward, I think that Nketiah is a clear option, as long as we don't think that Jesus is kind of imminently returning, which I think come March, certainly that'll be more of an issue. I think you can probably safely get through February, though. I think what's interesting about Nketiah is it just highlights what incredible. Suddenly, this, especially when you add Trossard in too, like incredible depth this squad has. Like a super competent backup striker, and depth at both sides. I mean, Saka is playing constantly right now. He's kind of like the Kevin De Bruyne of Arsenal. But even then, I think Vieira's looked okay when he's come on and played a little bit on the right side there. And in fact, Nketiah was playing a little bit on the right hand side when Jesus was still in. He came in, and I think he scored at least one goal as a late bench replacement for Saka. So just a lot of depth across the board. And then defensively, even today we saw Ben White has a really terrible match. I think he'll be fine long term, but gets taken off at halftime. They bring on I'm forgetting his name.
Tomiyasu.
Tomiyasu, thank you. And Tomiyasu picks up an assist like 10 minutes after he comes on the pitch. I mean, that's all Saka's goal, but still.
Yes, I think it was. I was wondering what was going to happen with Rashford running at Ben White, and Ben White always looks at his best when he. I don't know. Doesn't have to flex against somebody like Rashford. So I don't think that hurts Ben White's season long term. I agree. No,
I don't think so. And we haven't even talked about Saliba yet, who's been spectacular for Arsenal. I mean, I suppose maybe he's come back to earth a little bit. He was so mostly because he's really never been a goal scorer at any point in his career, and then picked up a couple early on, this season.
Yeah, and based on what we see usually week in, week out from Saliba, it's kind of a miracle that he got the goals that he did, because Gabriel is the one that will either push forward like Rudiger used to do for Chelsea, and also on set pieces. Occasionally they'll send both Gabriel and Saliba up for a corner kick. Sometimes Saliba is the one that just sits back and minds the store, because he's pretty good at just controlling and redistributing the ball. So he's sometimes not even in the picture when there are dead ball situations for Arsenal. So Saliba as a fantasy asset is losing his luster a little bit. I think what I need as a Saliba owner is a couple of clean sheets and bonus for him to sort of put the polish back
to not turn into Sven Botman, right? It's incredible. Yeah, well, we'll talk about him in a second here, but his metronomic consistency is kind of remarkable. So lots to like about this Arsenal season so far, both fantasy wise and obviously in the Premier League itself. Gabriel, I mean, you just look at kind of across the board: Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli, Saliba, Gabriel, White. Trossard pops onto this list just because he moved over from Brighton, but he's had an excellent season as well. Ramsdale. It's probably always a good sign when your keeper's this far down the list,
yes.
Right? Yeah, how well things are going. Then Xhaka has to get thrown in there as well, just because he's as a 5 million mid, he's on 80 points this season, which is really terrific. And I guess it's just going to keep going. It's I don't know. I thought it's a different Xhaka than we knew before, Brandon.
It is, yeah, and he gets another attacking return today with the cross to Nketiah. And everyone was kind of predicting, is Scott McTominay going to do the Xhaka thing and get the yellow card? He still has that reputation. He's keeping it clean, which is Arteta is really the new Xhaka out there, screaming like a madman on the sidelines, getting yellow cards when he really has no need to. So, whatever. I honestly don't care what Arteta does, and I don't think people need to pay too much attention to that. Let the man live.
It was surprising to see him get a yellow, though. I was a little. He doesn't seem like the kind of manager who would do that. But Brandon, we always spend too long in Arsenal. We do a midseason review. Yeah. It's rare that we have good things to say for years and years. It was just we just talk about Mesut Ozil and how much I wanted him to leave, and now that feels like a very, very long time ago. So it's great.
We need to enjoy this season while they're all priced at 6 to 7 million, because next season it's going to be a pain.
That's so true. The cheapest one is going to be Martinelli at like 8 million, and you're going to have Odegaard at 9.5 or something. If they win the league, you have to give them league winner prices, right? So, all right. Well, let's move on to Aston Villa. Not as much to say. It's a three fantasy wise. It feels like it's kind of a 3-man team here, Brennan. You have Leon Bailey at the top, 4.5 million, 70 points. I can never get it right with him. I bench him when he gets 12. Started when he gets 3. Tried it this week, failed. He had a couple moments. He actually created a shot for I think it was Ramsey who missed an easy chance, and then he got the ball back
ballooned it over the goal,
ballooned it into row Z, and then you have Ollie Watkins is 2 points behind him, has scored a nice goal, essential goal for Villa this week, and then Emi Martinez, who is maybe not fantasy-wise setting the world on fire. Hopefully, he gets down to 4.5 again next year, and then we can really consider him again.
Yeah, he looked great this weekend. Emi Martinez pulled out a couple of great saves. I like how Unai Emery is like secretly like paring this squad down and like selling Danny Ings and like unlike Steven Gerrard, trying to settle on a regular starting 11. So looking at Watkins and Bailey, as you just mentioned, I think you're right to flag them because at least we're starting to get a sense from Villa who's going to start week in and week out. Yeah,
I think that it's there's something. They're more fun to watch, that's for sure. He has made them a more kind of interesting team to watch this year, and yeah, I mean, the fact that Buendia cracks the top 5 is. Did you see Coutinho coming out? The fact that Emery is just like, yeah, Coutinho, you're done. Like, you're done.
Yeah.
Just move on. Find like go to Real Sociedad or something. Like we're good here, bud.
Yeah, that's just like a leftover barnacle from Steven Gerrard, where he's like, let's offer this guy a full contract. And you're like, probably shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, exactly.
But the last guy on the list here, Tyrone Mings.
Mingsy.
I don't know what to say about him other than his 4.3 price tag. We're not there yet, but similar to what you're saying about Martinez, if Aston Villa suddenly find some defensive solidity, then Mings is maybe interesting at 4.3, very cheap. If you decide we need to replace Bueno at Wolverhampton at any point.
Yeah, that's true. It's a future double game week, perhaps that could be something. And then you buy Mings for his assist threat, Brandon. 2 assists so far in the season, 4 assists last year. Who would have thought that he'd have 1 goal and 6 assists the last 2 seasons, Brandon? He should score more goals than he does. I really feel like he's often involved, right? I feel like
he's a big man.
Corners like Mings is exactly. He's a big man. He should be getting more goals. Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to Brentford. Again, kind of a 2-man story here. I guess you could throw Ben Mee in there as well, but it's David Raya and Ivan Toney are the 2 fantasy assets that have been hugely relevant. I had Raya. I got him on my, I think it was my game week 8 wild card, and it really worked out well. I didn't bring him back after the wild card just because I kind of got into the Kepa thing, which honestly has worked out really well. But another clean sheet from them this game week, and a 10-pointer from Raya. I mean, he's honestly been fine since the restart. 9-pointer in 18, 10-pointer in 21, 5 points in game week 20. So he's been fantastic. I think that I'm just so impressed with Brentford in general. They're just incredibly well coached. It just seems like I feel like they're a team like you would never want to play. Like if it was game week 38 and you were fighting with Brentford for, I don't know, the final relegation spot or something like that, like you would just assume that Brentford would win, right? They're just strong.
It's a club that shows you the power of continuity and consistency. It's just like give your manager and his coaching staff enough control and consistency. Let them ride the bumpy patches that will come for a smaller team like this. I mean, Fulham and clubs like that have tried to chop and change managers. You're seeing like Everton has. It's not even a symptom of small clubs. Like big clubs like Everton are just like, well, we can't stop chopping, changing, firing, rehiring managers until we get it right. Well, maybe I mean, Lampard is obviously not the dude, but there comes a time where you just look to Brentford, see how they're doing it, see how they're a trust the science sort of club. There must not be any climate change deniers at Brentford, is what I'm thinking.
You're right. It is a real trust the science, and the Ivan Toney. I mean, the thing is, they should be fine this season no matter what happens to Toney. They're at 30 points. They have. honestly, given who's at the bottom of the table, it's just hard to imagine Brentford being in any trouble, even if Ivan Toney ultimately does. I mean, Ivan has, Ivan. I know him well enough to call him Ivan Brennan. But
you met each other at the blackjack table, perhaps.
I wish it had only been like 2 bets. It's a bummer that it was hundreds of bets. Hundreds, it makes it a little bit trickier. Of course, it's all kind of dumb anyway, because betting is this gigantic part of the game that's completely accepted. But of course, we can't have players.
Do you think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I do, because I think the Hall of Fame should be should tell the story of baseball. And it should not be a kind of morality tale. Like, I think Shoeless Joe Jackson should be in the Hall of Fame as well, right? Like, it's sort of, but I could do 30 minutes on this, Brandon. We should do...
That's the Patreon pod that we owe the Pete Rose Baseball Hall of Fame pod. I like that. So I like that. Here. Ivan Toney does tell the story of Premier League football this season. And, I mean, he was disgusted watching that match that he and Brentford failed to score. So fair play to them. And I think... I think, as we just said on the last podcast, I think that this gambling stuff probably gets swept under the carpet till the end of the season, and who knows what happens then. But Toney, I think he's definitely worth our thoughts. Yeah, and do you think it'll go through the end of the season? You think that he'll hang around all year? I don't know. How long does this stuff take? I have no idea. Yeah, so he had until January 4th to respond to the allegations. I don't think we've really heard much even since then. Yeah. And appeals processes can certainly be dragged out, much in the same way that Newcastle will time waste. I'm sure all the lawyers at Brentford FC can do similar things in the courtroom. What an elegant turn of phrase I pulled out there. I think it will. I genuinely, knowing nothing as I do, I think it will probably will come back to it over the summer. And regardless, if the point of this pod is to look back at the story of the season so far, 4 double-digit matches for Toney, a 17-pointer game week 5 or game week 6, 13 goals, 3 assists, 20 bonus points on the season. Really remarkable. Only 7.7 million too. So obviously a terrific season for him. And the defense, Rayo's really dominated. It feels like the bonus points too. I was kind of looking at Brentford defenders this last weekend as I was like trying to fix my Cancelo problem, I ultimately just decided to sit on my hands for one more week because the impending double. But obviously, and I'm glad I didn't bring a Man United defender or whatever I might have done. But I think that I guess Ben Mee is maybe the one who's just sort of quietly slotted into that Brentford defense. And Mings needs to get Ben Mee on the phone to ask him how he's scoring more than 1 goal a season. Yeah, Mee could give him a lesson. I think the final note would be Wissa and Mboma, who are always flirting with our thoughts in fantasy. Were Toney to ever get out of the way, Wissa was this close to being a part of our fantasy plans, but just like there's no room to own more than 1 Brentford attacking or forward or midfielder. That's true. Maybe if we get an out of position Wissa at some point, Brennan, that's a conversation you and I can have on this I look forward to it podcast. So Brighton pops up now, and the thing about Brighton is when you look at their and we're just sort of using total point scores as kind of a starting point here, just to kind of sort of tell the story about these the team so far. But Brighton is kind of a different team now than they were. Obviously, we don't have Trossard any longer. And the 2 players who don't pop up on this little list that I pulled are Mitoma and Ferguson, and those were the 2 star player, or Patterson, excuse me, not Ferguson. Or was it Ferguson? It is Ferguson. It is.
Yeah, Ferguson. Thank you. I had it right the first time, and I got in my
Trust
head.
yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Mitoma's been spectacular. He I thought he had maybe come on. I thought he had maybe. He was injured at the start of the season. He's actually been playing. He's gotten minutes going back to game week 2, but it's really since the restart that he has been an absolute fire. He has 7 points, 8 points, 6 points, and 10 points in the last 4 matches. only costs $5 million, which is actually his original starting price. So, kind of a player that I think everyone is really looking at right now as a kind of an enabler. And they have two doubles to make up as well, away to Bournemouth and home to Palace. So fantastic doubles that will eventually get made up, and is only $5 million. It just kind of like hits every single note, right? Like it's sort of he's awesome.
It's interesting. The Graham Potter version of Brighton was really good, but we were having to consider more expensive fantasy assets and Trossard and the like. And now that it's De Zerbi's team, it's like he's a fantasy manager looking to make a deal, and he's bringing all of these cheaper options to the fore. Estupiñán, who got the 2 assists this weekend, Purvis, as you like to call him, Josh. He's 4.5, and he's favored. He's started every match since game week 14. I think if you're looking for a Brighton, or if you're looking to replace a Cancelo or any bum player in your defense, I think Estupiñán is great. And to look forward, Brighton are just getting going after the World Cup restart because they just have this incredible run of fixtures to come. Bournemouth at home in game week 22, followed by Palace, Fulham, Newcastle, West Ham, Leeds. They probably have the best fixture run of any team looking ahead.
Yeah, I guess I could have. I don't know. When you have a bad game week and you start looking at every possible transfer you could have made. I don't know. It didn't really make any sense, but I could have gone Matoma, I guess. I don't really know. But there's something. I think that we have to look at them with fresh eyes, like you said. I think that when it comes to our transfer decisions over the next few weeks, we have to kind of think of them. We have to kind of undo that Potter-based. Yeah. We have to get rid of the Potter players, Brandon. Just put them away.
I want a patented Josh Landon hot take.
Okay.
Tell me why Matoma and not Solly March. Now let's pull up the results. Now we looked at what Matoma did since the restart. He only blanked in game week 17. Solly March has 4 goals and 2 assists since the restart. Yeah. This boy is on fire.
Yeah. I just can't believe it. He's never done it, right? I mean, last year, 0 goals, 2 assists. The year before that, 2 goals, 2 assists. The year before that, 0 goals, 1 assist. It's just, I think it's a little kind of a little bit like Almiron. It's a little bit of a hot patch. And I'm not saying it's not backed up. I mean, you and I watched that Liverpool match together. He was terrific in that one. Yeah. But Maybe it's just Matoma's like the exciting new thing, and that's just more fun. I don't know, but Solly March, I can't get excited about bringing him in.
Yeah, I think Matoma is just he draws you in as a spectator because his gift is dribbling and beating players, and Solly March's game is so much less appealing in that he's just popping up in all the right places. And it's true, he's finishing those moments that he's getting right now. How much longer can it last? I don't think Matoma is going to stop beating players on the dribble anytime soon. So I'm with you. I'm Team Matoma here.
Yeah, we're all okay. So we're all on the Matoma train. Let's move on, though, Brandon. Let's move on to Chelsea. Mm-hmm. Another interesting. So Sterling, actually, I sold him short, Brandon. I didn't think he cracked my little list, and Sterling is there, fifth on points so far for Chelsea this season. Basically, I suppose Kepa, if he had played the entire season, would be. And remember, we talked earlier about how when your keeper is like 10 down, that's a sign of how your season's got so far. Kepa is like the number one player to own from this team with a bullet. Mount has had some moments. I had Mount at the start of the season. I was convinced that they were going to start really hot. They had a really great run of fixtures, and it was just hugely disappointing. Thiago Silva, who everyone just keeps thinking is eventually going to I don't even know, just fall over and die because he's in his late 30s, but he's still spectacular, still racking up the points. He's third overall on points for Chelsea this season. Kai Havertz, Raheem Sterling. It's just not a fun team to. I mean, I know you said the turnaround might be starting. Maybe the Liverpool match was a good sign, but I think fantasy wise, I'm really kind of outside of Kepa. I'm just in the kind of avoid Chelsea zone right now.
Oh yeah, well the turnaround will start when as they bring in a whole fresh batch of players. So to look at the first 20 game weeks for Chelsea, I 100% agree. This is delete from your hard drive sort of situation. I mean, Mount 3 goals and 4 assists is just appalling. There's not a single Chelsea player who appears on this is scoreboard podcasting right here, but there's not a single Chelsea player who appears on the first FPL scoring page. They've just done nothing attacking wise or defensively. I think it's interesting that Tuchel would not start Kepa and couldn't get anything out of him. I think Kepa's, I don't know. This is not really an interesting discussion or one that I know anything about. I just think it's been an interesting transition from Potter, where he's not figuring everything out, but he's figuring some of the things out. Okay, he's getting a song out of Kepa to a degree. Yeah, but he still doesn't know what his best fullbacks are, and the rest of the team is a mess. So, but back to my continuity argument, I do hope Chelsea stick with Potter. I think that he's kind of like an Arteta light. If Chelsea are able to stick with him for a couple of seasons and let him sort of see out his project, and just kind of curious, honestly.
Will they do that though? I don't know. It seems almost hard to believe that they'll actually let that happen. I worry that they're just going to kind of give him that he's. I don't know. I mean, most clubs are like this these days, right? You're always like a 3-match run of losses away from getting sacked. So,
and Arsenal was able to see what life was like without the Champions League after Wenger for a couple of seasons, and they realized to get it back, they had to bring in a bigger project under Arteta, and now they're on the cusp of getting back into the Champions League. Chelsea, I think you're right. They might still be not far enough removed from the Champions League to give up on that dream, give up on that income.
Yeah, that's true. And they're into the round. Well, let's see what he does in the round of 16 too. Right? They're through there, so we'll see what happens. All right, Crystal Palace. Kind of the same as it ever was with them. I mean, Michael Elise has had a nice little run, scored a great goal last week. Will Zaha has his moments. He's on Josh's ban list in fantasy. Will not be owning him again. Yep. Eze has been fine. I was really into the project last year. I was really excited about where Palace were going. I would say it doesn't feel like they've kind of pushed on from last year. Maybe that was always like a little too ambitious to think they'd push on, but it feels like it's stalled out just a little bit, the project.
Yeah, maybe. I'm feeling a little bit more, I guess, optimistic about Vieira and Palace, where to take a club where they were and playing the kind of football they were under Hodgson, it's going to take probably a couple seasons to work out all the kinks. So wouldn't it seem clear that a moment like this, like a dip in form and results, was going to come under Patrick Vieira? And now the challenge is, can they get out of it? And I think they can. Yeah. I believe they can. I guess.
Maybe it's just the fantasy part of it that I'm. I think you're probably right. Overall, the club, I think you're right. I think they're moving in the right direction. But just fantasy wise, I feel like I haven't really had a lot to get me. Maybe it's like there's too many holdover players still, too many IUs, and again, I'm just talking fantasy here. But there's just like too many players that we've all owned for it's like Solly March, It's like when you've owned these players at various times of the last 6 years, it's just hard to get excited about having them again. And you sort of want those Matomas, and so maybe at least we'll do that. But I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, at least did come off the bench this week. I assume that's just because of. I don't know, who even knows why, right? I'm not a big enough Palace. I'm not a Palace supporter, so I'm not sure what the rationale was there. But it feels like maybe he's one to watch. I don't know. Eze obviously too.
Yeah, I think we really enjoy watching their attacking players more. But you look at like Guaita was the star of the Newcastle match, getting a 10-pointer. You do wonder if there is something in this Crystal Palace defense for our fantasy budgets. I feel like there are probably too many other options for us to consider. But I mean, great to see our American friend Chris Richards getting 2 starts while Joachim Andersen is out injured. So, just for the Stars and Stripes rooting interests alone, maybe think about that.
That's true. It's a lot of clean sheets for Americans, Brandon. Leeds. We'll count those clean sheets for Aronson and Tyler Adams. And Ream, too. That's true. We'll see what Ream does tomorrow. We'll talk about him in just a moment here, Brandon.
Guys, did you hear that a Lionel Messi trading card recently sold for over $500,000 on Golden Auctions? Golden is the leading and most trusted destination for some of the most significant pieces of sports and pop culture collectibles, and better yet, it's not just for those high-ticket items. Golden's new always-on marketplace and weekly auctions start at just $5. That means collectors of all kinds can enjoy the same quality, convenience, and seamless user experience that Golden is known for. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, grade, or vault, Golden has something for everyone and is your one-stop destination for the love of collecting. Looking to buy a collectible? Good idea. While the S&P 500 fell by an average of nearly 20%, collectibles like trading cards actually increased in value. Looking to sell a collectible? Now is the time to do it. Golden is offering all sellers up to 50% off marketplace fees before February 17th. So head over to golden.co to get started. That's golden.co, GOLDIN.co.
Everton, I considered submitting 0 players here. I was a little surprised that Iwobi has edged Gray for overall points this season. I guess he had a tiny little run there, but I think we can just kind of move on here with Everton. Is there anything you want to talk about here?
Not
a lot of fun. Not fun for the supporters.
Large scale disappointment. Roger Bennett from Men in Blazers, if you're out there listening, please just stop whining. He acts like Everton are the only club to have gone through something like this, and I don't have a fan base. So give it a rest, buddy.
Okay, I
had to get that off my chest.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, it's true. It is. They need to. I mean, the fact that Lampard is still there seems like a problem, but I don't know. But the Everton supporters already know all this stuff, and so we don't need to rehash it. Fantasy wise, they've been unownable, all season. So that will continue probably for the entire fantasy season. I can't imagine owning a Fulham player, or an Everton player, I should say. I'm already looking ahead to Fulham, Brett, and the next team. Let's move on to Fulham.
Let's do it.
Be a little more positive here. Mitro, just real up and down. It just, there's a lot of luck to this, the game of low stakes betting on outcomes and whatever we call fantasy. I've had 2 moments in the last couple of weeks where I had Mitro and he had the ball and he was taking a late pen and he probably would have had 9 points in both cases. And the first case, he just gets it saved, not a great pen. Second one, double hits it. Both cases, he ends up with 0 points in those matches. Basically an 18-point swing there for Mitro. And you get the yellow card, which suspends him for the second half of the double game week. He was also 1 for 3 bonus in that match as well. And he ended up with a 5-pointer in that one. So that's another massive swing, especially when you consider potential returns for the second match in that double. So it's been a frustrating moment for him. He has been awesome for Fulham, but just fantasy-wise, it's been tough.
Yeah, for him to have 11 goals already is amazing and great if you're if you're hoping that Fulham does well. But what we just said about Ivan Toney, it's like, imagine having Mitrovic, but he never misses a penalty. That's kind of what you get with Ivan Toney. Yeah. So it's hard to, based on what we've seen during the first 20 game weeks, I agree. I think it's hard to make a case that Mitro is in your starting 3 forwards at the moment. I think the big standout is Andreas Pereira from a fantasy perspective, because he was identified before game week 1, before the season even began, as like, hey, we think that this 4.5 mid is going to start in an advanced role and be very active, and he has been, and he is. He's really delivered on fantasy points. He's got 2 goals and 7 assists. So I think the only issue with Andreas Pereira is now there's a lot of competition for fourth and fifth midfielder spots like Matoma, who we were talking about, and even if you want to try and just squeeze 2 Arsenal midfielders, I don't know, do something crazy and high budget in the midfield. But Pereira,
standout. And then defense has been pretty solid. Leno's been solid. Tim Ream, we talked about him briefly earlier. It's been a much. Yeah, I talked about wanting something new. It's always just fun every season to have something new and fun. It's how I felt like when the Wolves' first season, I was really into the Wolves project. And this year, I just think that Fulham are the team that have just brought something new. It's funny because this is their third promoted season in 5 years, but this is the first time where it feels like they really have something going right now. And even someone like Reed, Dickerdover Reed, just kind of being sort of connective tissue. And it's just a really fun team. And I think Mitro will have his moments in fantasy. It's not a full on troll thing or whatever, but it's certainly a very unlucky run with him. And I don't think that'll last. I think he ends the season with between 15 and 20 goals, certainly.
It is wild to see, like, usually when teams go up and down as frequently as Fulham, it's just like the team just gets totally overhauled. But there's still, like you said, connective tissue from, Tom Carney and Cabano and Mitro and the like. Yeah. Marco Silva is hopefully on course to do what Thomas Frank is doing at Brentford and just really make create a true like understanding that can last for many seasons at Fulham. So I'm all for it. And they are like Fulham are, I'll call it right now. We're not even halfway through this table, Josh. Fulham are the budget pick of the first half of the season.
Ooh, Brandon's budget pick. I like it. All right, let's do 2 more clubs, Brandon. Then I'll take a quick break. I think we can go through these both fairly quickly. Leeds, it's Rodrigo and everybody else, really. I got some flack earlier this season for talking about the overpriced midfielders for Leeds, and outside of Rodrigo, I was correct. Harrison has been pointless in fantasy. Aronson has been, I'm sad to say it,
he disappeared.
Has been even worse. Yeah, he does. He's just he's healthy. It's
I know. I don't know if the World Cup kind of took a little bit of the sting out of his tail, but he was just motoring around the field. Brendan Aronson was for pre-World Cup, and now it seems less so. I'm into non-fantasy wise, just the reputation that Tyler Adams is quickly building as being like the easiest guy in the Premier League to piss off. You want to see that if you're a Leeds supporter, you want to see that passion.
But he's getting 90 every match. I mean, as long as when he's not suspended, he's getting 90 every match. So
but it is.
I'm happy about that.
It is impossible to own any of these guys in fantasy.
Yeah. Rodrigo will at least get like a passing glance, assuming this double game week comes to pass. He's only 6.4 million. That double does include a Forest away match. So there's certainly something there. And he has been terrific, but I don't know. I think this might be a case where a team has a double, and I just kind of ignore the whole squad. I certainly wouldn't consider anyone on the defense. Although my boy and your anti-boy Luke Ayling has had some nice performances recently. So good on Luke. All right,
You'll have to send me the supercut of all the great things that he's been doing.
I've been editing it together the last couple months.
Thank you.
The final club before we take a quick break is Leicester. Again, it's a sign of where we are with Leicester as a club. I was curious. I was like, God, how could Maddison be the top points getter so far for Leicester this season? He has literally 1 point in the last 5 matches, and that he is still top for Leicester. It is just I don't know. I mean, you talk about continuity. This is the flip side. I mean, they're sticking it out with Rodgers. I personally happen to think that's probably the right move because he is a good manager, and I think sometimes you just have to kind of wait it out a little bit and wait for the project to reset a little bit. I mean, Vardy it genuinely brings me no joy to say that Vardy is done. He's basically since they came up, he was one of my favorite players to watch in the Premier League. I absolutely love everything about him, honestly. And it's just such a shame.
On and off the field.
Exactly, on and off the field. Well, you'd want to party with Vardy, right? Like
you'd be a fool
that was not
to
even
say
a
no.
Vardy party pun. Yeah, exactly. But you'd be a fool to say no. So I think that Madison, Barnes, Castagna, Ward. I mean, Ward had his little run right before the World Cup, and that's it. I think you said before that Dewsbury Hall, he only scores great goals. He's one of those fantasy players where he'll score 3 on the season, and every single one of them will be an absolute. It's kind of like Rodrigo. He'll score 3 goals, and every one will be an absolute belter.
I'm thinking of like Ruben Neves on Wolves as well.
Neves, exactly.
Dewsbury Hall. Harvey Barnes is trying to work his way back into our hearts, but it's I think the issue with Leicester is it's amplified by their defense. It's just complete chaos in terms of performances and results.
Yes.
I don't want to invest in teams where I really have no idea what's going to turn up week in, week out.
No, I feel the same way. I just think that it's not. I mean, there's just so many clubs right now who fall into that category. Everton, Leeds, Palace, Leicester. I feels like in most seasons you have kind of one player in all these clubs, right? So the whole team's kind of not doing anything, but Damari Gray might be worth having for a little run or whatever. And there's just you're not seeing those like talismans in some of these clubs this year. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we've got some heavy hitters to talk about in the second half of this week's pod. Brett, we're back. Part 2. We're kicking things off with a bang. Mo Salah, most expensive player in the game. Has he lived up to his billing, Brennan, as the greatest player in fantasy?
It's a simple question with a simple answer, and it pains me to say that if you were to go back when Salah first joined Liverpool from Roma, and my famous last words were, Mo Salah will be wildly inessential in FPL.
Yeah,
I was very wrong for a couple of seasons.
First 5 years, but now in year 6, you're proven correct.
Finally, I'm right. And you thought we were going to be, back to the same again, kicking off game week 1, goal and an assist, 2 bonus, and it has just kind of been a steady decline ever since. And I don't want to blame Mo Salah. There is something wicked at that club right now. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what it is. I think we're past the point of blaming injuries for problems at Liverpool. Losing Sadio Mane is probably the thing.
It's interesting to me because I think it's a big thing, but it's funny because I just saw the new the game week 22. Mikkel talked to them. Some of these. One of the guys that subscribed to just posted the chart, and Mo Salah is still number 2 on the to buy list, and I'm just like, how much are they still weighing historical data here? Because Mo Salah has been bad for a full year, almost like an entire calendar year, January to January. And you and I have been sucked in many times over that year. I've probably owned him for the majority of those Premier League game weeks from January last year through whatever he got back from the African Cup of Nations.
We both bought him post World Cup game week 17. He was in both of our teams.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And so I think I'm done for now, but I will probably change my mind. This is not like a Leicester thing where I'm just I will trust again with. He has a 5-year track record of excellence, and so if he and Gakpo and if Luis Diaz gets back, I think that things could reset a little bit. The player that I'm curious what you think about now, Brandon, because you did keep the faith with him for a while, was Darwin. And what to say about Darwin so far, halfway through the year? FPL wise, it's simpler. I had
this moment in that Chelsea match. I had Kepa in goal, and I didn't think that clean sheet was going to come through, even 16 minutes in. And then at some point, Darwin Nunez comes off the bench, and I had this chill go down my spine. I was like, oh, Darwin. Oh, no. Is he going to wipe out my Kepa clean sheet? So apparently I still have something lodged in my brain that makes me think that he can score goals. But sure enough, he had one moment, and it was a moment of him the attack falling apart. It's unfortunate. I will stick to my guns with Darwin to a degree. I think there is a great attacking player in there. I don't think anybody fully doubts that. But yeah, he's just like insanely unownable in fantasy.
Yeah, that's true.
I think he's an interesting player if he came through the Liverpool academy and broke into the first team and he's priced at 5.56, then I'd be willing to maybe sit through a couple of weeks of his shenanigans. But his price tag is just beyond what he's delivering. Yeah. So it is unfortunate because what we lost in Mane and Firmino is kind of just like dust in the wind at this point. They've not been able to replace with Gakpo and Darwin.
No, and I was trying to see if there's any Firmino news. He's been injured for. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. We didn't even mention Diogo Jota, who was awesome last year, and so this team has been so banged up and so bit by the injury bug that I think unless these guys just have to be in the Champions League next year and we get like a full on exodus, then I think then you could see a restart. I mean, there's like a long history of great clubs that don't have the Champions League to kind of worry about coming back and bouncing back the next year. So, we'll see what happens with Liverpool. Man City are an interesting story fantasy wise this year. Obviously, Erling Haaland is in many ways the story of the season. He is the story of the season to such a degree that it's almost overwhelmed all other stories. I mean, the problem is everyone got onto the story.
He's a Marvel movie, or he's like the Marvel movie cinematic universe. Like we all see these movies, and now we're kind of just like when a new one comes out, you're sort of like, sure, I'll see it. I'm not going to talk about it or tweet about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's so true. I saw like the Doctor Strange movie, and I was like, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to talk about it, but but Haaland, I mean, he scored a hat trick today. I had him captain, so I got whatever it was, 34 points from him. It was irrelevant, and in fact, the third goal that he scored, I lost points. I get a hat trick and I lost points because Mahrez supplied the assist, and it's just a wild spot to be in where. You can get a hat trick from your captain, and your rank doesn't move, and it's just crazy. And at some point, it's like. There's a part of you that's like, well, you should still celebrate the goals because like they're your team or whatever. But I'm like, I do have a brain, it's like I do understand that this doesn't actually help me at all. Like it is a game, and it's like, it's weird. Like it doesn't mean I can't appreciate how awesome he is, but like fantasy wise, he's like irrelevant, it's so weird.
Yeah. So to take that a little further, that balance you mentioned at the start of the pod of the fantasy game is meant to augment your appreciation of the real game because we're fans. Right. But right. For those of us who've played fantasy, even if you've played fantasy for 1 week, that feeling, that charge you get when your fantasy team is doing as well as your enjoyment of the real game. Like Aguero is a perfect example of this. Yep. Where you're just like, man, this game is great. City is flying. Also, I have triple captain Aguero, and he just banged his fourth goal. Yeah. That is an electric charge that keeps people totally addicted to FPL. So that's kind of what you're talking about with Haaland, where there, even with Aguero, there were, I feel like it was rare. There were weeks where it was as what's the word? Just like it didn't make a noise when he scored a hat trick. Yeah, there was always somebody else, like a Luis Suarez, who you could captain.
Yeah, and Harry Kane, who has been awesome this year, but not quite as explosive. And it's just, I mean, it makes me wonder if they're going to actually have to change the game. I don't really mind that the captaincy doesn't matter this year, but. I mean, I guess my thought this week, having not triple captained him last week, was incredible relief, given how easy it is for him to score a hat trick, that he didn't do it the week that we. The fact the fact that he only scored 8 points across two game weeks is, in hindsight, a miracle.
I had that feeling going into the Wolves match where I had to remind myself, like, it's okay if Haaland does something in this match. Exactly. I'm not at a disadvantage if he does anything the way I was when he was triple capped by everybody else.
It's crazy. I know. So it's just a weird, but everyone else is kind of having a bad season, honestly. De Bruyne is okay, but not essential in fantasy. Has not played very well. Mahrez has been fine. Foden is done. Cancelo is done. Ederson is overpriced. Bernardo's irrelevant. Gundo's irrelevant. The defense there's like 9 center backs and they all rotate. It's
still happening on our bless our patrons on the Discord. They're still asking like, okay, so I've gone through Cancelo, Walker, and Ake.
Kanji.
Who's the one that's not prone to rotation that I can get? I'm just like, don't get any of them. Get out while you still can.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could get Ederson, but I don't really see the point, because especially if they're not going to count as assists, Brandon. If you had the assist threat from Ederson, maybe, but they're always going to claim that was like a clearance or something. So anyway, so just a weird. I would say Man City actually are one of the weirdest FPL teams this season because outside of Haaland, you actually can really get by without having any other players. Man United, a real turnaround here, obviously. Rashford is incredible. The fact that he's only 7.1 is probably speaks to people who've just dropped out of playing FPL or something because his price should be 9 million. Even though he started at 6.5, he should be incredibly. His price should be. I do feel like price rises are happening more slowly, and I don't know if that's like a sign of engagement or what. But he's been awesome. He's up to 47% owned, and I mean, and this we'll save this for next week's pod because there's no game this weekend. But the question now for you and I both is, do you triple captain Rashford for 22 or Haaland for 23? And I think that there's a strong case for either one. I will probably go Haaland after today's match. I just feel like it's so easy. It's so easy for him to score a hat trick. And I think that Arsenal are not so strong defensively that I couldn't see him scoring some goals in that one.
Right. What you saw with City versus Wolves was just a systematic breakdown of the opposition by City, and one goal begets another, and that is something that is unique to Haaland and Manchester City. Whereas basically every other team, they can't quite. Arsenal is getting close, just blowing teams away with their skill. But that's definitely Kane's problem and why he's not getting multiple goals in multiple games. Is the team is. Just can't bury the opponents. I'm speaking.
We'll get to that. So outside of Rashford, who's been awesome, we talked about him a lot on recent pods. You and I both brought him in on the reset, and he's been absolute gold. Just absolutely incredible. Bruno has been a lot better. You've had him since the reset started as well. He has not maybe been as actually he was great. He was the player to own for the double game week. So that worked out really well. De Gea, I think, has been good. Shaw has really come on of late. It's actually really the opposite of it's not, I shouldn't say the opposite, but just unlike Man City, there really are quite a number of different players to consider for Man United. If they, for their double in 22, I really have to decide what I'm going to do there because it's Palace and. Assuming that it happens, right? We think there's a 75% chance that it will. It'll be Palace and Leeds at home. So I guess I'll probably get a second defender. That probably makes the most sense. And so which one do you get? Do you go with...
You're saying this like you want me to tell you to do something.
No, I'm just curious. If you were in my shoes, I think that... because their defenders, there's been a little bit of rotation there. I guess, maybe it's Martinez.
I think it is Martinez. I think the rotation has been down to just getting players back from the World Cup and getting them back, like Varane and Martinez in particular, who both played in the final. So, and they're their preferred starting center back pairing. So I think those guys are locks. I think. the issue with Wan-Bissaka, who is just he makes a case for he's like one of the best defenders one-on-one, but incredible. He is also the biggest liability in any back line where his lapses in concentration are beyond belief.
The corner he needlessly concedes. Yeah, it's weird because needlessly concedes a corner in the match today. Like I mean,
loses Nketiah on Nketiah's first goal.
Right.
Totally.
And but then he has these moments where he hangs with Martinelli for the entire length of the pitch.
Yeah.
Before dispossessing him. So it's interesting.
There's definitely a real player. I forget what team was in for him to bring him in, and then Dallow's continued injury problems had Manchester United retain him. And so that's the only issue for Wan-Bissaka is Dallow, who is currently still out with a thigh injury, and it's unclear when his return date is. Yeah, I think Martinez is your third Manchester United player if you want to go for a defender.
Yeah. I mean, Casemiro, who just has been sneaky good in fantasy this year, especially if you consider that he looks like the first 4 matches of the season for Man United, he didn't. He just got 10 to 30 minutes. They were just sort of getting him minutes, and then since then he's got 2 goals, 3 assists. So again, not much, but he did also miss. He missed this last match because of yellow cards. So that's really the kind of the problem with him, right? Is there's the yellow cards, but I mean, sub 5 million midfielder, 2 double-digit returns in matches already this season. So you could do worse.
I've got 2 questions for you. One's silly and one's not silly. The first is the silly question. Double game week. Why not Wout Weghorst? Why wouldn't you consider bringing him in? The second question, which is a serious question, is why aren't you trying to find a way with 2 free transfers to get Bruno Fernandes in for the double?
Yeah, I thought about that. I'm still just not super sold on Bruno. I have to be honest. He's been good. I don't know. It's just Bruno. It's the way he just. It's like a walking yellow card, and he's just the way he complains a lot. It's there's just something about him. Just this guy. Maybe I'm just annoyed with him a little bit still. I don't know.
He's not gotten a yellow card since game week 14. Everyone's made their peace with his whinging. I've noticed now.
You used to hate it more than anybody.
Well, sure, yeah, but allegiances must be formed when you bring somebody into your fantasy team. Sure. Watching Bruno the last couple of matches, though, I've noticed it seems like it's very measured. He knows exactly how to approach the ref with what degree of anger and injustice, and then when to walk it back. It's he has experienced over the last few seasons with Premier League refs, how far he can take it without getting that yellow.
I think part of the issue, and I forgot that I actually had thought about this a little bit already. Part of the issue is that the easiest way for me to bring in Bruno would be to just go De Bruyne to Bruno, right? Just very simple. But the problem is that Man City double in game week 23. So I'd be taking 2 Man City players out, which is fine with Cancelo, but annoying with De Bruyne because I really want to bring in a third Arsenal player. I only have 2 at the moment. So it's just easier in some ways to do the Bruno, to do the a defensive move. And also the fact you can get Martinez for 4.5 million, I think has some appeal as well, because I think that you could just sort of stick him in there for quite a while and he'd be a safe option. Yeah, but the problem is I don't know who to get for my second. Anyway, this is all content for next week's pod, Brendan. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's move on to Newcastle. The legend himself, Kieran Trippier, one of the all-time great defensive seasons. It's really
ridiculous. It's insane. He has
Baines,
if you count clean sheets, he's blanked three game weeks out of.
It's incredible.
It's just
one. Incredible.
I can't say it without laughing.
I think if Haaland wasn't in the Premier League this season, I think there would be a lot more talk about captaining Kieran Trippier, just because of his remarkable consistency. And it feels like even if they were to to concede that he would still somehow find a way to get attacking returns because he's just so involved in the attack. So we talked, Trippier is like the obvious player here, but just a quick note about Sven Botman, who has returned exactly 6 points for 5 consecutive matches: 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, whatever, 6. Before that, and the only reason that was broken up is because in game week 16 he got 7. And then before that, he got it was 2-pointer, then 6, 2, 7, 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 clean sheets in 11 matches for a 4.5 million defender. So that is, and they play West Ham at home in game week 22, Brandon. So maybe ultimately I just fix my defense with my free transfers and yeah.
I feel like this could be the most complex fan chant at St. James Park. You know that song, The Scat Man? Blah, 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 da, 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 da.
Yes.
It's basically just a guy scatting for a few minutes. And then it's like, he's the Scat Man. I feel like we need to do the Scat Man, but for Botman. And I think it would really just, it would solidify his legend amongst Newcastle supporters, the Botman.
The Botman. He looks kind of like a robot too. It's kind of a.
He doesn't look like a scat man.
Let me see, Sven Botman. Yeah, I see. He looks a little bit like Chat. What is it? Chat GPT. Is that how you're supposed to say it?
Yeah. Chat GPT. Yeah, he's like an AI created soccer player.
Center. Yeah, exactly. Center back. Yeah. But they've been great. Almiron, of course, had this amazing run. Come back to earth a little bit, but he still looks dangerous out there. I mean, it still feels like he's involved. But this is kind of how he always looked. And I think the fact that we just had this little run where he was hitting, screamers, and it's hard to sustain screamers, Brandon. That's how the game goes.
Feel like I'm conditioned over the last couple of seasons where Newcastle were not this great. They were more of a counter-attacking side, and a lot of their opportunities were coming from St. Maximin and Almiron just having to run for 50 yards with the ball until they got to a moment where they could take a goal-scoring opportunity. I think now that Newcastle is holding more of the ball, playing more in the final third, that's what's benefited players like Almiron. So, I don't think it's a total fluke. And I think the problem is a player like Matoma and the run that Brighton's about to go on. The fear of, and again, this is something for a future pod, but a possible blank for Newcastle in game week 25. The fantasy, so the necessity to hold on to value and all that sort of stuff that we've been talking about with Almiron will be less so, and he will become a player in the coming weeks that you can probably drop and get back when needs must.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's not like it's not, because his prices dropped too. It's like you bought so low that it's it's irresistible to hold on to him. And there's just too many doubles to be too sentimental with any of these players.
What about Pope, Josh? Tell me about Pope.
I just think the price has always been hard for me, but I mean, God, I wish. Well, I don't know. I mean, you could argue that Kepa's $1 million cheaper, and you get about the same. So I think
a 10-pointer from Kepa suddenly readjusts the math. Where Kepa, since the start of the World Cup, I think has averaged 6.8 points per game. By being bad a couple of game weeks and then outrageously good for a couple. So that's kind of the keeper argument in a nutshell. Is you can argue about who the best options are, who the best goalkeepers are, etc. It's really just going to come to these big points spikes that come along once in a while.
Yeah, and I think that I'm done with even trying to rotate Kepa and Ward. I mean, Leicester just defensively they're just done. All right, let's move quickly through a couple more of these teams here, Brandon. Forest. It's funny that the player that was kind of the story for Forest was Nico Williams, who was $4 million, was getting some starts. Nothing really clicked there. Forest, another
look
team
at them now. That dropping Nico Williams has transformed their season.
I mean, honestly, you look at their last 5. They picked up 8 from 15. It's not bad. The draw this weekend, and so I mean they're in 13th place, Brandon. They're like they're probably gonna get a Champions League. No, but like they have like they've righted the ship to a shocking extent. I mean, I think like many people, I was a little critical of them buying 40 or 50 players in the offseason, but I suppose it's worked out okay. I mean, like you do get to mix and match a little bit if you.
They're still buying more. They signed Chris Wood, and I'm just like, what are they going to do with all these guys?
I don't know. So all right. Well, there's not a lot to say there, but congrats to them for at least being out of the relegation zone for the moment. I think there's a good chance they still fall back there, but let's wait and see.
Mm-hmm. Could be a Bournemouth situation.
Southampton. We're getting a couple stinkers back to back here, fantasy wise, Brandon. I want any Southampton Spurs to.
Here is the team, Josh.
Not a lot.
You were asking, where's the bad team that has one really good fantasy asset? This is the one.
Yeah, your boy Prousey. That's
true.
Yeah,
I love. We were arguing the other day. Is it a golf swing or a cricket swing? I think that his second goal celebration last week was a putt, and that is is evidence in favor of golf swing celebration.
Yeah,
I'm sure people out there know about James Ward-Prowse's hobbies, and will think that we're idiots for not. But
yeah, had a goal chalked off at the weekend too. Yep. Yeah, so. You're right. It's him and really nobody else. I'm actually surprised that Adams is even close to him in terms of points. I kind of just like almost forgotten about Adams. Like he really just has not been a relevant player in fantasy. And what he's got 4 goals and 4 assists in the season. It's crazy that this is actually his 4th year in the Premier League. But I feel like I remember when he. Joined the Premier League in 1920. And so, yeah.
It does feel like yesterday for him. And I guess it's a congratulations to Che Adams for sticking around for 4 years. All the doubters would think that he'd be loaned out and sent back down to the Championship. But, he's neck and neck with Ollie Watkins for the will he, won't he survive this season in the Premier League?
Yeah. I mean, I think that... the Southampton are going down for sure, right? Like there's like they have to be the one team that like is almost like guaranteed to go down this year.
I mean, they appointed this joker from Luton Town, who like has 0 experience at the top level.
He looks young. He looks like he's like 25. Yeah,
he looks like a real joker, Josh. And it doesn't. And
we're not talking about Novak Djokovic here, Brandon.
He's not the Joker man. This is not your beloved Bob Dylan podcast.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But
we've already spent too long in Southampton.
Yeah.
Let's move on to Spurs.
Release me.
Another one man team. It's Kane and nobody. I mean, the story is their defense stinks. Let's not even talk about it, including Paris. Don't want to talk about it. Kane has been low key awesome, and everybody finally understood that over the last couple of weeks. He didn't have a great double, but he's been great. Let's see what he does tomorrow, but he's just, he is inevitable. Like he has just been incredibly consistent. He's got 15 goals and 5 assists in the season, and that's just no help from anybody.
He's so good. He's only 10 goals behind Erling Haaland this season, which is, actually that's like running a marathon to keep up with that pace.
It's true. 30,
I agree. I feel like at the start of the season, we both had this feeling like it's going to be a Kane season. Kane's going to go supernova, and he did not go supernova. He went like red dwarf or something.
Well,
like that.
I mean, I think that it's he's 3rd in points right now, 7 behind Trippier, but has the match tomorrow. So if he scores a goal tomorrow, then he'll be the 2nd overall points. If it weren't for Haaland, we'd maybe be talking about captaining Kane quite a lot. Maybe we'd be bored of captaining Kane this year, Brandon. It's like a real sliding doors moment there.
Yeah.
Or if he signs with Man City last year instead of Spurs keeping him. So but Son. I mean, the other story is Son just being a little bit done at the moment, and maybe that I got a little flack for saying that on social media, but I It's not like I want it to be true. I like Son like everybody else, but it's not fun to watch him right now. It feels like really short on confidence, if nothing else.
Well, Antonio Conte doesn't seem like the sort of guy that's walking around the training ground giving people confidence.
That's true enough.
I wonder if Conte survives the season. Also, like the rumors are starting to bubble up. Kane to Manchester United over the summer, which to me feels like the most obvious transfer of all time, with Manchester United being in the Champions League, presumably next year if they can keep this form going.
Yeah,
I think, Spurs fans might be sweating.
Yeah, that's an I somehow had not heard that rumor, but I can't tell if that's one of those wishful thinking rumors or like a proper rumor, but that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay, let's Wout Weghorst is a great placeholder. It's not like they
that's true.
Have to come out and get like a real guy.
Like Wout the placeholder Weghorst. All right, two final clubs. West Ham. West Ham are almost like an incomplete. Right, they finally sacked Moyes. It's a total restart. Of course, they inevitably won their first match fairly handily. They have lots of good players. They fantasy wise, they've been irrelevant this year. But let's see if they restart a little bit. There's a lot of meat on that bone, Brandon, fantasy wise, but we just hasn't happened yet.
Now they've got Danny Ings. I mean, they saved money on this Danny Ings move because he brought his own shirts, his own kits.
Yeah, exactly. As you can tell, because he's got the kit now on the site. It's brought it with him.
Yeah. But I thought just watching West Ham play Everton, Everton will flatter most teams given their current form. But Antonio looked pretty good. Jared Bowen back to goal scoring. You work Danny Ings in there. I think West Ham might be back.
And that brings us to Wolves, Brandon. It's a very I don't know. I guess there's some. I thought Collins. Let's focus on the positives here. I thought Collins had some nice moments today. Podence came on, almost scored a goal. Neves is a wonderful player who has kind of stuck around with Wolves, which is kind of cool. Yeah. It's one of those guys that he'll always be associated with the club, which is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. In general, it feels like this is a club that's a little out of cycle. It feels like that's almost a theme across many of these clubs this year. It's like a transitional year in the Premier League, Brandon. A lot of players and clubs are transitioning kind of out of. Like Raul Jimenez today, watching him on the pitch. I mean, he's just a shadow of the. Remember how threatening he used to be? 3-4 years ago when he was kind of in his prime. He's so dangerous, so just threatening at all times. He was an incredible fantasy asset too.
I thought that was one of the wildest substitution strings I'd seen in a long time. Just at halftime, Lopetegui drops Hwang, Traore, and Jimenez, and just brings on some other guys. And that's clearly a statement to them or
says something.
So I don't know how. I feel like it's getting better at Wolves. They had such a bad start to the season. I think it's clearly moving in the right direction. To what degree is very difficult to tell. But Bueno is this he is the least exciting gift that you got for Christmas. Yeah. You're like, 3.9 starting defender. You mean he gets subbed off every match at the 65th minute? Okay.
That's true. But sometimes those are the best gifts too.
You need them.
The little ones. So, exactly. And they have 2 wins in their last 5. They have a draw in there as well. I'm looking at the form table right now. I mean, you look at kind of all the teams at the bottom, the bottom 6 or 7. I mean, they're actually playing about as well as any of those clubs. They're actually playing better, arguably, than any of those clubs. So I think that Wolves should be fine this year. I just think there's like a few too many players that are really world class. I think Jose Sa is a terrific keeper. I think that Ruben Neves is a great midfielder. Moutinho is not peak Moutinho anymore, but very solid. They're just too solid, I think, to go down. And you compare them to some of the other clubs that are just mixing and matching players, and it just feels like Wolves are gonna find a way to pick up 12 more points over the next 20 matches.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's fine because we like Wolves hanging around.
Yeah, me too. That's how I feel. I would go to the Molyneux, Brandon, for our fall trip. That would be a fun. Which we need. I want to hit some of the I want it to be like a mid-table trip. We throw in one biggie, but I want to go see all the kind of the clubs we have now. I don't know if we can go all the way to the South Coast, but let's save that for a summer pod. Anyway. That's all 20 teams. You can tell that we're starting to think ahead already, Brandon. But thank you so much for listening. I hope I enjoyed going through all those clubs, Brandon. It was a nice little reset here.
Me too.
To look at everything. And if you enjoyed the pod, if you want to chat with us and the people who listen and support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Once again, that's patreon.com/alwayscheating. One more time, Brandon, patreon.com/alwayscheating. We'll do a bonus podcast this week, 100%. And we will... and we have the Discord is up and running now as well. I'm still figuring it out. I thought I had it all cracked, and then there was like this thread thing. I was like, "What's going on? Where is everybody?" They're all on the thread.
It's learning.
It's taking some getting used to.
The Discord is evolving in real time for our patrons. Yeah. It's cool to watch us all sort of figure it out and get the most out of it. So
that's true. That's true. So, that's where you can go to support the podcast. And Brendan, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you to producers Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, to Big Gafford, Bobbis Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner-Lodahl, Nick Wright, Lazaros Janos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin, Rich Evans, Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Mikey Uong, Shivmore Joria, Andy Portlock, Dan Parsons, at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Lee Hickman, Vulgar Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, James Conroy, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Paul Herzig, Heath Cram, Roberto Morals, Thomas Kislov, and Noah and Louise. Rate, review, subscribe to Always Cheating wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on Twitter at HalCheaters, wherever you get fine social media. And for all this information and more, visit our website, alwayscheating.com. Josh, our midseason report card for all 20 Premier League clubs is finished. For the Always Cheating midseason report card, I give us an A+.
I think so too. I think it's been a long, and I know you were kind of joking, but I will say it was fun. It was fun doing those World Cup pods. It's been a kind of just a very busy Premier League calendar this year, and I think it's going to reset a little bit, and we're going to get a little bit more back to normal. I think this spring, and then I'm really I gotta say I'm already looking forward to the fall. I think barring another global pandemic, Brennan, I think that we're going to have something close to a reset this fall, and I honestly think the community is going to come back a lot stronger too. It feels, talk about like in cycle. That's how I feel about like some of the communities right now too. I feel like it's like there's a little too much anger. It's like, come on, this is just a game. This is fun.
Right.
If you're going to create a fantasy Twitter account, don't like, and you're getting angry all the time. Maybe you need to create a different like account somewhere, like,
or call it FPL anger.
Just think about whether you should be getting angry all the time. I've done a lot of my own thinking about this over the last year, and
this comes from a personal journey that you're on.
Yeah, the result is I tweet about a tenth as much as I used to, but I think it's a healthier place for people to be. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll be back soon. Bye.